Hasbro is one of the most dominant toy companies on the planet. It controls some of the most recognizable brands in the world like Monopoly and Magic the Gathering. It's a slow-growing legacy toy business, but is it really? Today, we're talking about Alta Fox's report on Hasbro and whether or not there's any hidden magic beneath the surface of this great gaming empire. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dollars and Cents, helping you make sense of making dollars. As per our usual format, we'd start with Hasbro's history, but not today. Instead, let's kick off this video with Alta Fox Capital, the alternative asset management firm turned activist investor. Alta's current portfolio boasts some odd picks, from Red Violet to Callaway and even an obscure mining company in Brazil. But today's focus is on their most recent venture in shareholder activism. So what does that mean? Shareholder activism is when a large investing firm attempts to use their shareholder rights, often voting rights, to make changes to public companies. Some famous shareholder activists include Paul Singer, Daniel Loeb, and Carl Icahn. Alta Fox is no different. Its first investment was Collectors Universe. At the time, the company was in negotiation for acquisition by a group of investors. Alta Fox originally intended to improve the company, but ultimately helped negotiate a buyout. The original price was $75.25 a share, but Alta managed to negotiate the offer up to $92 per share. After Collectors Universe, Alta Fox's next venture was N Labs, where it helped negotiate a higher buyout price once again. Though N Labs didn't get its desired amount, going from 40 Swedish kroner to 53 Swedish kroner isn't bad at all. And that brings us to Alta Fox's third public activist venture, Hasbro. When Alta Fox announced it would invest in Hasbro, the firm also released a 100-page analysis of the toy maker and its subsidiaries, specifically focusing on Wizards of the Coast. So let's go ahead and take a look for ourselves. To start, Alta Fox's fundamental problem with Hasbro is its ownership and control of Wizards of the Coast, which it bought in 1999. WOTC also owns Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons, the epitome of nerddom. Alta Fox believes that WOTC would be better as a tax-free spin-off from Hasbro. It argues that spinning Wizards of the Coast would allow the rapidly growing company to focus on developing and marketing its own IP. Currently, Hasbro uses most of WOTC's generous margins to reinvest in the toy maker's own slow growth. This has played out in one of the most disastrous misuses of capital I've seen in a long time. Known for Magic the Gathering and D&D, Wizards of the Coast is developing a AAA game. If you thought it was for either of these magical IP, you're wrong. It's for G.I. Joe. The very first venture in WOTC's newly launched game studio is a game not even funded by Hasbro, but by Wizards of the Coast. And if that's not the most blatant misuse of capital, then I don't know what is. Despite this horrific development, Hasbro seemingly made good when it bought E1 in 2019 to produce an original Magic the Gathering based series. Or not. Alta Fox also draws a problem with this acquisition. It argues that Hasbro didn't need to buy E1 to create new content. This deal instead saddled the toy maker with an unnecessary debt load that it's still paying off 3 years later. Now that we have a general overview of what's going on, let's dive into some of the reasons why Alta Fox believes that Wizards of the Coast is such a good business. The first thing to really catch my eye was this idea of the graduation phenomenon that occurs in Magic the Gathering specifically. Alta Fox explains it as players of games like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Eventually play Magic as they grow older. Personally, I and many others believe this view about the game as well. And graduation is a great way of putting it, creating a constant funnel for new players to Magic, a built-in customer acquisition funnel, so to speak. Another strong business aspect is WOTC's recent online expansion. In 2018, Wizards of the Coast fully released Magic Arena, which is the very first fully realized online Magic experience. And it's had nothing but success, with player estimates of 3 million at the end of its first release year, and this was accompanied by projections of almost 11 million by the end of 2021. But of course, only Wizards of the Coast really knows. But Magic the Gathering is only half of Wizards of the Coast. The other is the staple Dungeons & Dragons. While Alta Fox doesn't talk too much about this half, it's clear that D&D is growing tremendously too. CNBC reports that D&D had its biggest year ever in 2020, despite the lockdowns forcing many players to its online side. There's so much more in Alta Fox's report that extensively details Wizards of the Coast and the gravity of the business. In fact, too much to cover here. Go and read the report yourself, it's some of the best research I've seen on any company. One of the other points I want to hit on is Alta Fox's complaints with the Hasbro side of the business. And one of the things that I've talked about extensively on this channel is having proper incentives for CEOs and board members, because if these programs are mishandled, it can lead to the eventual crippling of any company. So you can imagine my frustration when I found out that Hasbro's board of directors made over $4 million in compensation last year and have made over $135 million across the last 5 years in incentives. That's despite Hasbro vastly underperforming the S&P 500. In comparison, longtime rival Mattel's total board compensation was $2.4 million last year, a significantly smaller amount. And that $135 million in compensation didn't even yield positive results. Hasbro stock as a whole has underperformed the S&P 500 benchmark by 100%. In fact, if you invested $10,000 in Hasbro stock 5 years ago, you'd end up with a whopping grand total of $10,020 today, excluding dividends. That's called poor performance. Clearly, Hasbro has problems, and a lot of them. In its report, Alta Fox nominated 5 new board members to help refocus the board of directors at the company, but personally, I doubt it'll ever happen. Actually, the toy maker just nominated Wizards of the Coast CEO to CEO of Hasbro itself. He'll take up the job 2 days from this video's release. Sure, that seems like a good move on the surface, but I don't think it is. It's actually a big problem, especially if Alta Fox's goal is spinning off Wizards of the Coast from Hasbro. Plus, why should Hasbro change at all? Why bother changing its executive compensation? If you get paid a lot and your incentive structure improperly benefits you, there's no reason to suddenly change plans. And this is the unfortunate reality that Alta Fox is up against in dealing with Hasbro. Really, I do wish Alta Fox's Connor Haley all the best in his efforts. I just don't think it'll be fruitful. That said, is there any value to be had in Hasbro itself? What about the long term? I want to present 2 futures for Hasbro stock, one investable and one not so much. The first future sees Alta Fox get what it wants. It replaces all of Hasbro's board members who agree to spin out Wizards of the Coast. The future is definitely investable if this occurs. Hasbro could be significantly undervalued. The reason is actually quite simple. Hasbro would still be one of the biggest toy makers in the world. It could focus on expanding its IP and growth through acquisitions. Spun off, Wizards of the Coast could focus on reinvesting its heaps of cash flow back into its business. It wouldn't have to create a G.I. Joe game, and its empire could expand and develop new IP as well, and that's the ideal future. Yet the second future, which is more likely in my opinion, is the future where Alta Fox doesn't get the 5 board members and Wizards of the Coast remains captive to Hasbro. If this future occurs, I believe Hasbro will remain an overvalued mess of a company. It continues to misuse Wizards of the Coast cash flow on stupid projects and dumber acquisitions, while heavily compensating a lackluster board of directors, and Alta Fox loses completely. But right now, I think we should keep a very close eye on Hasbro, because if Alta Fox succeeds, Hasbro could be significantly undervalued. Investors will get more transparent access to Wizards of the Coast, and honestly, if this happens, I'd heavily consider buying Hasbro, both for their spin-off and for the standalone Wizards of the Coast. But that's all I've got for you in this video. What do you think Hasbro will do? Would you consider investing if Alta Fox wins? And more importantly, do you play Magic the Gathering or Dungeons & Dragons? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, or hop on my Discord where we can talk more. I'm always down for a conversation. Until next time, I'll see all of you in the next episode of Dollars and Cents.